Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. So the rupee's been crashing, the Sensex has been crashing, morale has been crashing, investor confidence in general is perhaps at an all-time low, certainly in the last 20 years. Just what have we done to the Indian economy? How bad are things? Is this the worst they have been for the last 20 years or so? Or are we overhyping the extent of depression that we should be in right now? And also, what is the way out of this? Because surely we don't believe, truly in our hearts, that this is the end of the India story. India will bounce back, must bounce back, should bounce back, but how can we make it do so? That is really the question that we're going to be addressing on this episode of The Big Fight, and some of the best voices to help us figure out how exactly to do this. First of all, from the political side, right here with us in the studio, we've got Piyush Goyal, MP Rajya Sabha from the Bharatiya Janata Party. Great to have you with us. Sanjay Jha, spokesperson, Congress Party, who's been, the government obviously has to take a large share of the blame for whatever's happened in the last couple of years. Although, Piyush, I'm not going to allow you to get away completely either, especially with what's been happening in Parliament. So we're going to get both of you to have a look at it. Mohandas Pai joining us from Bangalore. One of the people who was perhaps one of the most articulate voices as the India story really started to rise. So must be completely depressed at the way things are going forward. He is, of course, the chairman now of the Manipal Global Education Services. Here with us in the studio, we have Arun Maira, member of the Planning Commission, again being really instrumental in helping craft all that's been happening in India, and certainly been talking about some of the things that he thinks we should be doing somewhat differently. Nandita Agarwal Parker is a portfolio manager with Karma Capital Management, an FII, who will presumably tell us whether you and the rest of your, colleagues are about to pull out of India and plunge us completely into gloom, or whether you're not going to do that. And we also have with us Mr. Sudhakar Reddy, who's the General Secretary of the CPI, who I'm sure will have a somewhat different take on all of this. Why don't I just start off with you first, Arun, actually. Is the gloom being overdone, or is the pessimism, is the sense of dismay, if not despair? What have we done to what was arguably the most powerful story just 3 years ago? Everyone was saying India is the only country which has survived the global slowdown. This is the India century, if not the India decade. This is certainly the India century, the Asia century. And today you're saying it's all over. We are finished. What's gone wrong?
Vikram, you said at the beginning that India's economy will grow. It must grow. It should grow. I think you put those words in the wrong order. We must and we should. But we will only if we do what we must and we should. And when you said, what have we done to kill the India economic story, it's not what we have done, it's what we've not done which has resulted in this problem. What we have not done is to fix the institutions of this country so that there is implementation, there is efficiency, so in the democratic decision-making processes there's consensus on new policies, and thereafter there can be implementation and efficiency in execution also. We have not attended to those things. We have talked the last few years in macroeconomic numbers and macroeconomic variables. We talk even today and we say, oh yes, our GDP is falling. Of course it is falling. We say today that the rupee is really crashing. Of course it is. We say that we are worried about our fiscal deficit, which is growing, and we should be. But there are two other numbers I think we should need to worry about most of all: the current account deficit and the inflation. Well, India is not doing that badly as the others are doing, but in terms of current account deficit as well as the inflation rate, we are doing really badly.
Okay.
Now, current account deficit is cash running out, and he's an accountant, he'll tell you that companies go bankrupt when they run out of cash first. It's not running out of the capital, okay? And this is our problem. We have not done things to fix, and we can talk about what those fixes are, which we have not done.
Okay. Nandita, let me turn to you next. The big concern that people are having is that this entire collapse of the rupee that we have seen already, and certainly the dampening of sentiments, is before FIIs have really started to pull out money from the equity market. The Sensex has crashed. FIIs have only pulled out a small amount of money so far, but $2-3 billion, maybe that. There's still hundreds of billions of dollars of FII money sitting in the Indian stock market. Are you getting the sense at all that people are going to start rushing for the exits? And also, some of the very short-term, knee-jerk steps that have been taken in the last 10, 15 days of saying, oh, well, you know, let's not send too much money abroad and let's try and control some things. Does that add to a fear psychosis? Because people rush for the doors before the doors are shut on them.
Foreign portfolio flows into this country have been very misunderstood by the government and the general public at large. In fact, this happens to be very sticky long-term money that's coming into India. And it has also been extremely patient money. And in fact, more patient than the money that, for example, went into the bond market.
It's an interesting point you're making. So you're saying that the FII money that has been coming into the Indian stock market is not in it for the short term and are not necessarily going to be selling and running away with one quarter's bad news. Is that what you're saying? That it is actually long-term patient
That's
money?
exactly what I'm saying. Despite of the short-term problems that the Indian economy is facing, the long-term picture is very intact. What bothers us, though, is that at a time like this, when there is a global event in terms of the Fed possibly tapering their bond purchases, and there is a fear globally that the Indian government is not coming together and trying to bridge the gap that needs to be bridged. So we think that the policies that are being announced reek of desperation and short-termism, and that's really something that is not very conducive in bringing in more portfolio inflows into the country. And I think that's the way we should think about this whole situation. If you were landing from the moon today, you would say, wow, this is the most undervalued currency in the world. And if we could just take care of A, B, C, and D problems, we could probably have an upside, not just from equities, but also from currency appreciation. So I really want to bring this around to a question of what that A, B, C, and D might be.